Good evening, welcome in RNQ is classes block number 3 unit number 2 language games and paradigms. 2.0 objectives. The objective of this unit is to familiarize the student with the theory of language game and why it brought about revolutionary change in the philosophical thinking. The unit also aims at familiarizing the student with the notions of paradigm as how a concept of a philosophy of science helps in understanding the traditional philosophical thinking. 2.1 introduction. The revolutionary idea in the history of philosophy came at the strategic time when the whole of philosophy was moving in one direction. The terms which are intended and were brought by anyway not in a day but came out of the constant struggle to debug the complexities of problems and as understood by the philosophers of the time. A constant search and reflections has paved way towards never understands, resulting in the new directions of human understanding and never heights of comprehending the reality. One such turn be find at the end of 19th century and reached its fuller manifestations in the persons and works of Wittgenstein. The pure speculative thinking, which was considered as a subject matter of philosophy, got blurred as the advancement in science took place. Science became part of human existence and secondary reflections was needed on science itself. A unique analysis of the growth of science with its history paved way to the noble insight into the notions of paradigm. In fact, later on the term paradigm shift became so popular that it was a reflection on science and its growth. Paradigm became the substratum of any theory through which phases of development were differentiated became the substratum, and the newer understandings were reached. In this unit we are going to see these two notions of language games and paradigm, their implications of philosophy, particularly to epistemological issues. 2.2 Wittgenstein before language games. The term language game is unique to the 20th century linguistic philosophy. After the drastic turn in philosophical approach wherein the language became the focus of philosophy, the analytical mode of philosophizing gained its importance. The century-old philosophical problems were looked from the language perspective, and hence language became the focal point of philosophical analysis from the time of Brentano. Mingong and Husserl defined a slow movement towards the focusing of language. However, the movement became intense at the end of the 19th century with the emergence of the ordinary language philosophy of more logical of atomism of Russell's and culminated in the picture theory of Wittgenstein. The mathematical applications towards language in the form of symbolic logic by Frege and analysis through the analytical school of Vienna, who contributed towards this movement all through this history. Wittgenstein stands out as a unique philosopher of language who contributed intensely to the language philosophy and the philosophy that followed after. 2.3 Picture theory as the preliminary for language game theory. Before entering into the language game theory, the picture theory of language plays an important role in understanding Wittgenstein. It was his earlier work, the Tractus, which contains the main idea of picture theory. Tractus Logico-Philosophics is one of the original works of Wittgenstein in its content and style. It is arranged as a series of remarks numbered in decimal notions altogether. It contains 7 propositions, and rest are the explanations of these propositions. They are: 1. The world is everything, that is the case. What is the case? The fact is the existence of states of affairs. A logical picture of fact is a thought. A thought is a sentence with a sense. A sentence is a truth function of elementary sentences. The general form of a truth functions is PNC. Whereof one can't speak, thereof one must be silent. In analyzing the history of philosophy, Wittgenstein found that the philosophical problems arose due to the misunderstandings in the language itself. Therefore, clarifications of language would result answering the questions which are considered as philosophical through tractors. Wittgenstein wanted to desert language as to make it an answers for the philosophical problems. The result of such an enterprise is the picture theory, apart from which are also other important themes in the tractors. Picture theory aims at explaining the nature of sentences, propositions. Wittgenstein wanted to find out what makes it possible for a combination of words to represent a fact in the word. How is it that by producing a sentence I can say something, can tell someone that so and so is the case? He held that a sentence is a picture model of reality. His understanding was that when we put a sentence together, we construct a model of reality as picture represents. For Wittgenstein, a science sentence represents the reality. It does it so by showing its sense. It shows how things are. If it is a true a sentence composed of old word is able to communicate a new state of affairs by virtue of bring a picture of it. The pictorial elements have a one-to-one correspondence with the things in the state of affairs. It represents. Picture theory held that a picture must have something in common with what it pictures. A sentence as a picture has something in common with the reality. It was a twofold answer to the philosophical problem. At one hand, he analyzed language as the one which has propositional structure at the basis upon which ordinary language is built up. On the other hand, there is reality at the root of which there is thought as the basis. As the ordinary language represents the surface structure, the deep structures of language propositions represents the thought. This representation is done in the way of picture. However, he understood the limitations of the pictures, that it can't represent itself, for which it needs some other form of representation. Applying it to the language and thought, Wittgenstein felt that which can't be brought can't be said. Whatever can be thought can be expressed. Thus, the analysis of languages so the limits of our thinking. The functions of philosophy that is to indicate what can't be said by presenting clearly what can be said. The conceptions of propositions. Language rests on the notions of time, name being the simple sign, not composed of other signs. A name stands for objects but doesn't picture the reality, for it can do so only in a combinations of names. These combinations of names portrays the combinations of objects, that is a state of affairs. Another important contributions to tractors is the notions of the elementary propositions, which consist of names. Elementary propositions can be analyzed further. The names in elementary propositions exist as a logical necessity. The logical necessity arises out of the requirement that propositions have a definite sense and indefinite sense. Therefore, is no range at all. The analysis of elementary propositions showed that either they are true or false in representing the reality. By Jensen held that our ordinary binary language is in perfect logical order. The work of philosophers is to analyze the propositions into elementary propositions and so how what evidently lies there are not bringing an order where it is not. Wittgenstein employed a technique of truth tables to analyze the truth and falsity of propositions. His understanding was elementary propositions either fall under the theologies of or contradictions of theology, so just certain combinations of propositions and the structure of the constitute propositions in the whole scheme of things. There was no place for will and actions, ethics, metaphysics, all that falls outside of logic. He conveys anything outside of logic and accidental. Language games and framework for a meaning. The picture that emerges of the tractors is that of a static, clear out, and a binary world. The realities which at times they defy the logic of which is not yet identified become accidental to the world of our living. The picture theory occurs sidelined status with regard to their role for they fell outside the realm of logic. Yet these are the facts which makes much sense and living possible along with human constructs and perceptions. Therefore, the static picture of the world through the clarifications of language failed to have a holistic account. The realizations from the part of Wittgenstein that his career the earlier philosophy failed to attempt at a holistic picture of human world gave way of understanding philosophical problems in a new light. We find a drastic shift in his views in the philosophical in investigations. It is not a overwhelming of the tractors, rather it is in the background of tractors. His investigations make sense. Therefore, in the history of philosophy, it is unique to Wittgenstein. He produced two different original systems or different periods of his life. 2.4 Language game, a shift from picture theory. The important elements of picture theory in the tractors were names, elementary propositions, states of affairs, logical space, etc. The purpose was to understand the logical world, the possible world which could be expressed in language. The path taken was logical analysis of propositions. In the investigations, the move was from the foundations of logic to the nature of the world. The shift therefore is from the limited understanding of language of the natural science to the language of wider forms of life. It is no longer a one view of language, rather language within the language given the totality of names and the totality of elementary propositions. The language will not give the essence of language and the essence of the world. This is the very idea which presuppose that the propositions carries with it whole the language. Investigations rejects this idea. A sentence prepositions does presuppose language game, but a language game will be only a small segment of the whole of language. The example for such notions appears in the examples of the mason and his helper. It is not the merry words, but the totality of signs and symbols within the framework constructions of building gives meaning to the language or in comparison with a higher complex language. This language may appear as lower, but it has its own language game in which we elements of language make sense. Another important shift is from the limited understanding of the language into the forms of life. The tractors anticipated the newer combinations of objects in the logical space. The tractors held that what is given can be arranged definitely, provided the new arrangement conforms to the Laws of logic investigations differ from the understanding a new language game would embody a new form of life which is not merely a rearrangement of what already exists. It is a form of life because the new language game carries with it not merely words but behaviors, reactions, etc. In the third place, the investigations reject the claim of tractors, the universal form of language. There is nothing common to the various forms of language that makes the language. There is not something common to all language games, just as there is something common to all the games. The commonality the which makes them the game, rather it is the multitude of relationships overlapping and scoring. The language game therefore can be better understood in the light of the concept of family resemblance. Therefore, it is not the unity of essence which makes the world, or rather, it is the difference which is at the root of reality. Another important Another important shift is from names as absolute to names as relative. The names stood for object and characters, whereas investigations held the view that the words names are neither simple nor complex. The simplicity and the complexity are brought in when they are viewed against the background of language. Gave two other objections that were brought against he notions of names based on the understanding of characters. They are firstly characters equated the meaning of the name as the object stands for, and the names are a priori for meaning. Investigations goes further and says that the meaning of the word is never a thing, and secondly, before one can find out what a name stands for, one must already have mastered the language game to which the name belongs. Investigations are considers the logical necessity of the simple object, not as absolute that since is not definite in relations to the particular language games. Therefore, the language analysis need to be prepositional only. Rather, it differs according to the language games. Therefore, precision, exactness are relative to particular language games, wherein we find the actual language as imperfect based on these ideas. Therefore, the philosophical idea and the actual language comes into conflict because the analysis does not lead to what is there in this context of be reached by the language. We are called to see what is really there. There needs is to be shift for the analysis of to descriptions. It is through descriptions become realized that there is no hidden structure beneath language and reality. Rather, in descriptions we come to see what is really there. Language games and meaning. It is wrote nothing the central notions of investigations, that is meaning, are usually tractors mention. Language games and meaning. It is worth nothing the central notions of investigations, that is meaning are used. Will tractors mentioned that sentence prepositions has meaning or sense because it is a picture. Investigations turns it upside down and says it is the use employment applications that gives meaning. Therefore it is not the analysis of the elementary propositions which made sense, rather than situations in which a word, a sentence, prepositions that it use gives meaning. A significant sentence therefore is a tool with which a certain job is done. The use here is understand not as correct use of the word sentence, but use stands for meaning. Thus there is a its particular behavior and circumstances go along with the sentence in its meaning. Ultimately, it is the use in the context. Context makes meaning. 2.5 meaning as meaning as use and hermeneutics. In the background from tractors of investigation, some insights can be derived in understanding hermeneutics in the language game theory. Basically, how a word, sentence, or the tractarian picture is interpreted determines what is made of it. What is deduced or deduced out of the propositions is entirely dependent on the understanding of the propositions. Therefore the meaning being identical with use comes before use. The use is based on the understanding of the understanding of the propositions. Therefore the use proposes the meaning known. Known began thus say that understanding carries with it the compulsions. In this prior knowledge of meaning comes in relations to the logical compulsions. Next city bit was discussed in the tractors. The going beyond in the investigations Wittgenstein puts in the notions of mental act between the act and the state of understanding. The mental states can be reduced from the actions resulted or are are known by the conclusions drawn in a particular language game. However, Wittgenstein calls them the general disease of thinking because the newer situations are dealt in the mental act. Confirming to a rule. Therefore, it appears that the mental acts do confine the newer situations to particular way of rule applications. Investigations differs here in saying that there is a difference in our understanding of a rule and applications of rule in a particular way. The emergence of meaning is determined in the way a particular rule is applied and not by the deductions of mental acts. Thus, the meaning emerges not merely by the way rule is formulated in the sentence, but by what we say and do in actual cases. It is the agreement that determines whether a particular action is in accordance with the rule. Therefore, it is our agreement. Agreement fixes the meaning of the rules and defines their content. There is a proximity between the growth of meaning and increase in the practice. It is in this practice the rules get their meaning. Therefore the emergence of meaning is in the actual practice in the applications of rule in particular situation. Going beyond the private rules of a language, Wittgenstein asserted that such a thing is not possible because meaning arises only in the context of circumstances of situations. The notions of private language no language seems to be of secure because the rule applications of such language can't be made known to others. Therefore the meaning in exclusion without forms of life is not possible for the hermeneutical enterprise. This understanding has great impact. The hermeneutical enterprise becomes meaningful when we look at the meanings emerging from the life world. 2.6. 2.6 The analysis and understandings of paradigm. The term paradigm became famous with Thomas S. Kuhn, a philosopher of science. In this, the structure of scientific revelations in his attempt to analyze the history of science, he found that science has grown in a systematic way. However, the new insights into science which brought revelations in science were altogether different way of looking at things happened that then that then than the things happen than the traditional way of looking at things. Identifying this as the basis for understanding what of paradigm is. Kuhan was able to go to the conceptual understanding of the paradigm science when it works within a established framework supported by theories and empirical data still faces complicated questions. The answers to those questions is challenging, and at times the answers can never be found in the given framework. A certain amount of habi- uh, arbitrariness is present in such enterprise of searching for the answers. The science at this stage is called as normal science, for it is based upon certain foundations which are well established. Paradigm is therefore an established framework within which many unsolved problems are answered. It need to be science only for that matter. Any scientific discipline, paradigm is not a complete thing in itself. It emerges as one finds it out as the research advances, thinking the advances, and it becomes more refined. Paradigm in this sense gives meaning to the larger body of facts, and establishes the relations within the paradigm. Secondly, it helps in predictions or to predictions to the given data. Thirdly, a paradigm resolves some of the ambiguities and problems within the given paradigm. It is worth nothing in the analysis of Kuhan that long gap of time elapses before the science of new paradigm emerge. Certain notions are important to note in the Kuhanian analysis of science, which could be applied to the science as well. The term paradigm has been used by Kuhan in two senses. First of all, it stands for the entire constellations of beliefs, values, techniques, and so on said by the members of a given community. On the other hand, paradigm denotes one sort of element in that constellations. The percent concept puzzle solutions which employed as models or examples can replace explicit rules as a basis for the solutions of the remaining puzzles of normal science. Kuhan was within the framework of normal science. He has applied this understanding of paradigm to the natural science. Kuhan emphasizes on the second understanding of paradigm as deeper, for it given a place for new framework. The second important aspect to notice in the understanding of a paradigm is the notions of the community structure who share a particular paradigm. It is circular in its relations to a community because paradigm is led by a scientific community, and scientific community consists of individuals who share a paradigm. Community here refers to the persons who hold on to share a paradigm. Science is not freed from the community structure because science is essentially a shared enterprise. Therefore, paradigm in the philosophical sense, the second understanding is the collections of community commitments. The proper term can be used in the Kuhanian sense is the disciplinary matrix. It is a disciplinary because it refers to a discipline as a common possessions of the practice practitioners, and secondly matrix because it is composed of ordered elements of various sorts which need for the specifications. This disciplinary matrix is characterized by symbolic generalizations, beliefs in particular models, values inherently held, and shared examples. In this sense, as the new paradigm emerge the diverse scientific communities are merged into and are reduced to fewer groups. This is the this is the functions of foundations because it units diversities of problems and reduces them, unites them around a central problem around which other problems are centered. Or the nature the paradigm is such that it has the unique functions of uniting pre-paradigm a period and the new paradigm. The older problems are understood in the new light. In this light, when we analyze a paradigm governs not the subject matter but the group of practitioner practitioners. A few insights can be gained from the analysis of paradigm by Kuhn. They can be classified as following and can be applied to linguistic turn as a paradigm shift. In an established paradigm, all problems are looked from a particular framework which in turn determines the nature and solutions to the problems. The period of such status quo, the normal science has problems with those empirical data which defy the existing paradigmatic frameworks. 3. The attempt to newer solutions to the problems comes as the paradigm shift wherein the older problems are understood in a new light. The results in the revelations in science wherein when stray phenomena of established framework become examples, models of new framework. 5. New paradigm rules the science for a period of time until the anomalies are found to be answered with a shift in the paradigm. 2.7 Language games as new paradigm. Within the school of language philosophy, it is worth nothing that it has progressed through different directions from the rigorous analysis of language to the ideal conception ideal ideal conceptions of it to the building of artificial language. The language philosophy has influenced, however, name of Wittgenstein mainly for these contributions to this particular field can't be ignored from the point of view of static view of language. He progressed towards the dynamic view of language. In his hands, the language analysis has become a novelty and the and in fact a paradigm. It is paradigm because it has shifted the issues of static view to the dynamic view of language. The focus on the forms of life throws light on the variety of language rules. The notions of logical space and logic rule govern determinate language is understood in different light. There is no single rule governing language. Rather, each form of life it has its own logic which determines the type of language. Therefore, the language is never a fixed static thing. Rather, it acquires meaning and structure as it emerges from the life world. This is a new paradigm shift because the philosophical problems had been understood as absolute in all realms. They are problems within the form of life of philosophy. Hence, the answers of these problems need to be found within the framework of philosophical discussions. This understanding also proposes a paradigmatic shift in the investigations with regard to the notions of family res- resemblance resemblance a problem in one form revalence resemblance or problem in one of form of life may have similarity in the other forms of life. This is grand insight because through language as a language game rule governed is not an isolated entity, rather it's that some similarities with other life worlds form of life. The rules of one form of life govern on particular type of language. At the same time, that is not absolute to other form of life, rather it has similarities, and these similarities in its logic in relations to other languages. 2.8 Epistemological issues. Looking at language form of paradigm shift to language games, certain problems surface in the epistemological realm. The problems can be categorized as realistic problems, logical problems, and epistemological problems, etc. In the epistemological realm, in the first place, how does a language incorporates in the structure of structure of realistic framework basing on the empirical content of the sense data. What logic of language connects it to the reference of all that is outside our mental realm? What is the logical structure of those forms of language which refer to the empirical content, a realistic picture of the world? In the second place, the question is concerned about the languages which are based on the logic of idealism. What actually is the logical structures of those languages which have a structure of idealistic form of life, the form of life concerned with imaginations, ideal states, etc. To have a structure within the given form of life in relation to the understanding of family resemblance. How do these different languages resemble each other? The sharing between different forms of life, how does it took place? Is the rule governing of language is our reading into a particular language, or it is inbuilt into it? These are the questions which need to be tackled in the epistemological aspect of language game theory of wine gesture. As epistemology is concerned with knowledge, can be satisfied the contents of our knowledge according to different language games, then which is that language which unifies all different forms of life, and what is its rules and game?